Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever wondered why some people get chased while others get chosen, then forgotten? It's not about looks. It's not about charm. It's about energy, the kind that says, I don't need you to want me because I already want me. When you stop trying to impress and start moving like someone who knows their worth, everything shifts. You don't just attract attention, you command respect. And that is when they start to crave you. Stay with me, because we're about to flip the script. We often feel the urge to explain ourselves fully, to make sure we're understood, liked, and approved of. It's a habit rooted in the need for validation. If people understand us, we think, they'll stay. But over-explaining removes the most powerful tool we have in attraction, mystery. When you give someone the entire manual up front, there's nothing left for them to discover. People aren't drawn to what's obvious. They're pulled toward what feels just out of reach. The mind is wired to chase clarity, to resolve confusion, to solve puzzles. When you leave room for curiosity, you don't push people away, you pull them in closer. The key isn't to be cold or calculated, but to be comfortable letting someone wonder. It's okay if someone doesn't have all the answers about you right away. In fact, that's exactly what makes you magnetic. Every time you feel the urge to fill a silence with justification, resist it. That pause you feel uncomfortable with, that's the space where someone becomes intrigued. It's in those moments that their brain starts to work, trying to fill in the blanks, trying to understand what you meant. You don't need to rush to comfort them with clarity. People value the things they invest energy into understanding. If everything about you is laid bare in the first few moments, they don't have to work to understand you. And when someone doesn't have to work, they don't value the outcome as much. Your power is in being open, but not entirely transparent. Share pieces, not your whole story. Let your words create intrigue, not answers. People fall in love with questions, not conclusions. Being mysterious isn't about being manipulative. It's about being self-contained. It's about knowing that your worth isn't dependent on how clearly someone sees you. You're allowed to protect your depth. You're allowed to share slowly, piece by piece, when it feels safe. In fact, doing so sends a powerful message. I'm not in a rush to be liked. I know my value, and it doesn't need to be proven all at once. This doesn't mean withholding affection or acting indifferent. It means showing confidence in your silence as much as in your words. The moment you stop rushing to be understood is the moment you start becoming unforgettable. People don't remember what was easy to grasp. They remember what made them think, feel, and wonder. When you meet someone new, don't lead with your resume. Don't feel the need to justify your past, explain your decisions, or clarify your boundaries before they're even tested. Let people earn those explanations. Let your energy speak before your words do. When you hold back from over-explaining, you give others the gift of curiosity. They start leaning in, asking questions, trying to connect the dots. That's when connection deepens, not through dumping facts, but through allowing a natural unfolding. Think of your story like a novel. Would you read a book if you already knew the ending? Would you be invested if the first chapter revealed every secret? The power lies in pacing, in keeping the pages turning. People often think that being open means being an open book. But true openness is about being intentional, not exposing, but inviting. When you share with intention, you maintain your emotional gravity. You hold the center of your power. This means you don't speak just to fill gaps or gain approval. You speak to connect, not to convince. When you're at peace with being partially seen, you become far more intriguing than someone who constantly demands to be understood. It's not about withholding who you are. It's about knowing that who you are is rich enough to be discovered slowly. When others feel like there's always something more to learn about you, they keep showing up because they sense there's depth beyond what's already visible. Confidence is quiet. It's not in declaring every thought, but in knowing you don't need to. The most captivating people are the ones who can sit comfortably in their silence, not because they are hiding, but because they've learned that the right people will be curious enough to ask the right questions. When you aren't always volunteering your thoughts or chasing validation, you create a space for real engagement. Others start to tune in more closely, noticing the things you don't say, the expressions between your words, the pauses that hint at untold stories. That's where connection truly begins, in the unspoken layers. Being less available with your inner world makes the moments you do share more powerful, more meaningful, and more memorable. Holding mystery also means you know how to walk away from those who want shortcuts. If someone demands instant access to your entire life, that's not intimacy, that's entitlement. True connection is patient. It respects the rhythm of revelation. When you show someone that you won't be rushed, you create the possibility of real respect. Not everyone deserves front row seats to your story. The more you honor your own depth, the more others will too. You begin to attract people who value effort, patience, and presence. People who want to experience you, not consume you. That's the shift. From trying to impress to letting yourself be discovered. From proving your worth to letting it reveal itself. This approach shifts the power dynamic entirely. Instead of worrying whether someone will like you, you begin to observe whether they're curious enough to earn the next chapter. You stop auditioning and start observing. That's the quiet power of mystery. It allows you to lead with presence rather than performance. There's a calmness in knowing you don't need to entertain or impress. The most interesting people are often the ones who know they don't need to explain why they're interesting. They just are. They live, they listen, they move with intention, and people naturally lean in. When you stop giving everything away, others start seeing your value without you ever having to spell it out. This isn't about game playing or strategic aloofness. It's about emotional self-respect. It's about showing the world that you know your energy is a gift, not something to be handed out freely to anyone who asks. You're allowed to be curious too. You're allowed to evaluate whether someone is emotionally safe before sharing your depth. When you hold back from oversharing, you protect your peace. You give yourself time to assess. That discernment is magnetic because it shows you care about your emotional boundaries. And people are drawn to those who lead with both warmth and self-awareness. You're not cold, you're intentional. You're not distant, you're selective. So the next time you feel the urge to explain yourself, pause. Breathe. Remind yourself that you don't need to fill every gap. Let the silence sit. Let someone else do the reaching. You are not a product to be pitched. You are not an experience to be consumed all at once. You are a story worth reading. Slowly, patiently, curiously. Let others turn your pages. Let them wonder what's next. When you live with that sense of quiet self-assurance, you stop chasing validation and start attracting respect. That's when real desire forms, not in the rush to be known, but in the grace of being discovered. You put your cards down, you make them known. When you stop realizing that your story worth reading. Slowly, patiently, curiously, let others turn your pages, not in the rush to be known, but in the grace of being discovered. Let your mystery do the talking. Compliments are one of the most powerful forms of connection, but they lose their magic when they're used as a tool for approval rather than a reflection of genuine insight. The moment you praise someone too quickly or too often, it stops landing. It becomes noise, not music. Real compliments don't come from a place of seeking something. They come from grounded confidence. They're not designed to win affection, but to acknowledge something specific and meaningful. When you recognize something subtle, something others might miss, that's when your words truly leave an impact. Praise becomes powerful when it's rare, intentional, and unexpected. A well-timed compliment is like a mirror held up at just the right angle, not to flatter, but to reveal. It says, I see something in you that's real, and those moments are remembered. The key is to compliment with precision, not flattery. Flattery is vague. It's usually about surface-level traits, looks, charm, charisma. Precision goes deeper. It means noticing effort, integrity, or growth, things that show character. When you notice someone's attention to detail, or how they speak with respect even when disagreeing, or the way they protect what they care about, you're not just admiring, you're observing. You're demonstrating emotional intelligence, which immediately elevates the connection. People can feel the difference between a compliment that's earned and one that's given to keep someone close. The first builds respect, the second chips away at it. This is why being selective in your praise makes your words carry more weight. Compliments are best delivered without fanfare. When your tone is calm, assured, and not seeking a reaction, it changes everything. It tells the other person that you're not giving them praise to gain their attention. You're offering insight, not bait. That subtle distinction gives your words power. You're not impressed by just anything. Your standards are higher. That doesn't mean you're cold or dismissive. It means when you do speak up, it matters. It creates a contrast that sparks curiosity. What made this stand out to you? Now there's intrigue. Now there's value in your words. When someone starts to earn your validation instead of being handed it freely, that's when they begin to crave it. You don't need to overstate something to make it meaningful. A simple, quiet observation lands deeper than exaggerated praise. Saying, you have great style is fine, but saying, the way you paired that color with your jacket, it's bold without trying too hard, shows you're actually paying attention. It's a form of intimacy, showing someone they're seen in the details. That kind of acknowledgement creates emotional friction in the best way. It makes the person stop, reflect, and feel a sense of recognition. That's where connection lives, not in grand gestures, but in those small moments where you reveal that you're tuned in. When you compliment like this, you shift from being someone who wants something to someone who knows what they're seeing. There's a difference between appreciation and adoration. Appreciation can stand on its own. It doesn't need reciprocation. It's generous, but grounded. Adoration often seeks a return. It wants validation back. When you compliment from appreciation, you detach from outcome. You're simply sharing a truth. That level of emotional independence is rare, and it's incredibly attractive. Because most people use praise as currency. They're giving it in hopes of getting something back. Love, attention, reassurance. When you don't play that game, you rise above it. You offer something real in a world full of noise, and that makes you memorable because sincerity is magnetic. Timing matters as much as what you say. Compliments hit differently when they come at unexpected moments, when no one's fishing for them. That's when they feel the most authentic. Anyone can hand out praise in moments of celebration or performance, but when you recognize something meaningful in a quiet moment, it cuts deeper. It's the difference between saying good job after a success versus saying, I admire how you stayed focused when things weren't easy. One notices outcome, the other honors resilience. One scratches the surface, the other reaches the core. That's the art of touching someone without making a show of it. That's the kind of validation people come back for. It's not about withholding kindness. It's about offering it from the right place. When you're confident in yourself, your compliments aren't performative. They're not given to manipulate or win favor. They come from a stable foundation. That's what makes them credible. And credibility is everything in connection. When people know you don't just hand out praise easily, they begin to value it more. You become someone whose opinion carries weight, not because you're better, but because you're intentional. You don't throw around your energy for attention. You invest it with care. That makes your words rare, and people remember rare things. When you pair thoughtful compliments with emotional restraint, It creates a dynamic that's deeply compelling. You're warm but not needy. You're observant but not overbearing. This contrast, the ability to acknowledge beauty or depth while staying self-contained, builds tension. And tension is what keeps people interested. It creates a push-pull that invites curiosity without pressure. You're not trying to prove you're kind or insightful. You're just being it effortlessly. And when someone senses that your praise isn't a hook, they stop guarding against it. They lean in, they want to feel it again, not because you gave them a high, but because you gave them something real. One of the biggest mistakes people make is praising too soon or too often, thinking it will build connection. In reality, it can dilute the very impact you're trying to make. If someone gets constant compliments from you, they stop registering them. It becomes background noise. But when you speak with discernment, when you observe rather than react, your praise starts to stand out. It hits with clarity, it lingers, it becomes something they carry with them because it wasn't given to everyone. Your approval becomes meaningful because you don't give it for free. You give it when it counts. That's not coldness. That's value. So be generous with kindness, but deliberate with praise. Notice what others overlook. Speak to someone's inner world, not just their appearance or performance. Compliment in a way that reflects who you are. Someone grounded, discerning, and emotionally intelligent. Let your words be mirrors, not masks. Don't use compliments to fill silence or build bridges that aren't ready to be crossed. Use them as moments of clarity. Brief glimpses into how deeply you're paying attention. That's how connection deepens. That's how someone begins to feel seen. Not for what they show the world, but for what shines through when they're not trying. When your praise carries that kind of presence, it doesn't just touch the ego, it touches the soul. Emotional attraction is not built in a straight line. It's created through contrast, a dance between warmth and challenge that keeps the connection dynamic and alive. When you are always agreeable, always giving, always predictable, the spark tends to fade. People don't fall for perfection. They fall for someone who can make them feel something real. That comes from being kind, but not a pushover. Supportive, but not overly available. Warmth draws someone in, but challenge keeps them engaged. It's not about being difficult or distant, but about showing that your energy has structure. You're not just a source of comfort, you're also someone who can hold a boundary, tease with confidence and inspire growth. That interplay creates tension, the good kind, the kind that builds desire. Warmth, when genuine, is magnetic. It creates emotional safety and shows that you are open, receptive, and grounded in your own value. It's in your smile, the way you listen, the way you make someone feel important in a room full of distractions. People are naturally drawn to those who feel good to be around, who offer a kind of lightness without demanding anything in return. But if there's no edge behind the warmth, no sense of emotional independence, it can quickly become over-familiar or overly available. The magic is in the balance. You can radiate affection while still having standards. You can be inviting while still being unpredictable. Warmth without depth can feel shallow. Warmth with boundaries feels powerful. On the other side of the coin is challenge. Not confrontation, but complexity. Challenge says, I'm not just here to please you. I have my own mind, my own standards, my own way of seeing the world. It's not about being argumentative or cold. It's about not always being easy to read. It's about having opinions, speaking up when something doesn't feel right, or choosing to walk away from situations that don't serve your worth. This doesn't make you hard to love. It makes you real. People don't crave perfection. They crave honesty with depth. Challenge isn't about testing people for fun. It's about showing that you value yourself enough to expect the same from others. That kind of energy commands respect, and respect deepens attraction. When you switch between warmth and challenge naturally, you become emotionally engaging. One moment you're open and sweet, the next you're playful and teasing, then thoughtful and serious. That range creates emotional texture. It keeps conversations interesting, and it keeps people on their toes. Not in a manipulative way, but in an honest, alive way. Predictability is comforting, but it's contrast that creates excitement. You're not performing different versions of yourself. You're simply giving permission for all parts of you to show up. And in doing so, you allow the other person to bring out different layers of themselves too. That's what makes chemistry last. A feeling that there's always something more to discover. The key is to remain authentic throughout. If you're kind, be kind because you want to be, not because you're afraid of conflict. If you tease, do it playfully, not cruelly. If you challenge someone, do it from self-worth, not insecurity. The balance works when it's rooted in sincerity. Emotional depth is what separates shallow flirtation from real connection. People may not remember exactly what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel, the rush, the reflection, the comfort, the spark. It's the emotional ride that leaves an imprint, and that ride is created when you show both your softness and your strength, when you let your personality breathe and evolve moment by moment. Think of your presence as a rhythm. If the beat never changes, people tune it out. But when there's tension and release, energy and pause, engagement and space, it becomes music. Being warm all the time can feel monotonous. Being challenging all the time can feel exhausting. But when you weave the two together, you become unforgettable. One moment you're asking a thoughtful question, the next you're calling out something playfully ridiculous. One moment you're giving genuine praise, the next you're teasing with a grin. That emotional elasticity keeps things alive. It invites curiosity, and curiosity leads to connection. People fall for those who make them feel both seen and stretched. When your energy says, I accept you, and also I expect more from you, it creates a beautiful tension. Not pressure, but invitation. An invitation to rise, to be better, to stay sharp. The warmth makes them feel safe. The challenge makes them feel inspired. When you hold both in your presence, you stop being someone who's just nice or just interesting. You become someone who awakens something deeper. So you want to be safe. You want to be safe and just deeper. You want to be safe and just deeper. People begin to crave that balance, the feeling of not knowing exactly what to expect next, but knowing whatever comes will feel alive and real. It's not your job to entertain, but it is powerful to be emotionally engaging. You don't need to manufacture impact, you just need to let your complexity breathe. Sometimes you're sweet, sometimes you're sarcastic, sometimes you're serious. That natural variation is your strength. It shows that you're not trying to win someone over, you're simply being your whole self. And that wholeness is refreshing in a world full of one-dimensional personas. You're not just soft, you're also sharp. You're not just inviting, you're also discerning. And when you can hold both without losing your authenticity, you stop blending in. You become someone who's felt deeply. This balance also protects your energy. When you know how to be warm but not overextend, you don't burn out. When you know how to be challenging without being guarded, you don't build walls. You set a tone. I am open, but I have boundaries. I am kind, but I am not naive. That tone sets the stage for mutual respect. You attract people who appreciate both your generosity and your strength, who see you as someone they can trust, not just someone they can charm. You're no longer performing to be liked, you're expressing to be understood. And that shift changes everything. So let yourself be both. Be affectionate when it feels true. Be playful when you feel that spark. Be firm when something matters. Be still when space is needed. You don't have to pick a lane. You're not one thing. You're a mosaic of energy, mood, and soul. And the right people won't just be drawn to one side of you. They'll be drawn to the range. That range is where real connection lives. That's what makes you unforgettable, not because you're perfect, but because you're real, alive, and beautifully unpredictable. True confidence begins when your sense of value is no longer dependent on someone else's attention. When you realize that your worth isn't tied to who chooses you, who validates you, or who stays, everything changes. You stop performing. You stop overgiving. You stop shrinking to fit what you think someone wants. That quiet certainty in who you are allows you to move differently, with intention instead of desperation. You no longer chase affection to feel whole because you already know you are. This grounded self-worth becomes the foundation of all your interactions. It's not loud or boastful. It's steady, calm, and undeniable. You're not trying to prove anything. You simply live like someone who already knows. When your value comes from within, you stop settling for situations that only feed your ego but starve your soul. You become more aware of how energy is exchanged. You notice when attention feels hollow versus when it's rooted in genuine interest. You no longer cling to breadcrumbs because you know you're worth the full meal. The highs of superficial praise no longer intoxicate you because you're already full, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. This changes the way you show up in relationships. You're no longer there to be chosen. You're there to choose. And that shift in power isn't about control. It's about clarity. You become more selective, more patient, more in tune with what actually aligns with your truth. This kind of inner grounding makes you incredibly attractive, not because of what you say or how you look, but because of how you carry yourself. There's an energy that comes from someone who doesn't need to be constantly reassured. A lightness that says, I'm not afraid to walk away from what doesn't serve me. That quiet strength isn't something you can fake. It comes from experience, from learning to sit with discomfort instead of running from it, from building a life you love outside of someone else's gaze. When you love your own company, you stop fearing loss. You stop fearing silence. And that fearlessness creates space for real connection, not performance-driven bonding. People sense when you're grounded. They feel when your presence isn't asking for anything. There's a different kind of magnetism in someone who is content, not needy, who is generous but not self-sacrificing, who listens deeply but doesn't abandon themselves in the process. You become a safe place, not because you give endlessly, but because your boundaries are clear. You stop trying to convince anyone of your worth. That job is already done. You don't need constant reassurance because your identity isn't built on approval, it's built on truth. The truth that you are enough, whether someone affirms it or not. The desire to be craved is human. We all want to feel special, wanted, seen. But when that desire becomes the engine of your actions, it can lead you away from your center. You start adjusting your behavior, softening your voice, hiding your needs, just to maintain interest. And eventually you lose sight of who you were before you wanted to be wanted. But when your self-worth is anchored, you no longer need to create a version of yourself to hold someone's attention. You allow yourself to be fully seen, knowing that the right connection won't require you to shrink. You show up honestly because you're not afraid of someone walking away. You'd rather be rejected for your truth than adored for a mask. The irony is that when you stop trying to be craved, you often become even more magnetic. People are drawn to those who don't need them, who can enjoy them but don't rely on them for a sense of identity. There's a natural tension that forms when someone feels emotionally whole. It's not that you're distant, it's that you're sovereign. That energy commands respect, and respect is the seed of desire. People may come for the attention, but they stay for the substance. And when your life is full, with passion, purpose, joy, you're not waiting for someone to give you meaning, you bring meaning with you. You no longer react to mixed signals or inconsistent behavior by trying harder. You respond with self-honor. You don't beg for clarity. You hold space for mutual effort. You don't try to fix someone's lack of consistency by being more available. You observe, you notice, and you decide what aligns. That inner discernment is powerful. It allows you to walk away not with bitterness but with peace, Because your happiness doesn't hinge on someone else figuring out how to treat you. You've already figured that out for yourself. And that knowing shapes every decision you make. Living from internal value also deepens your compassion, not only for others, but for yourself. You stop viewing rejection as a personal failure. You see it as redirection. You don't internalize someone else's confusion as a reflection of your inadequacy. Instead, you stay rooted in self-trust. You understand that not everyone will match your energy, and that's okay. You're not here to be everything to everyone. You're here to be fully yourself and let what's meant for you meet you on that path. That clarity saves you from chasing situations that drain you. It frees you to receive what genuinely uplifts and expands you. You begin to love more freely, not because you need love to survive, but because love is what overflows from your fullness. You offer without attachment. You give without sacrificing yourself. You remain open without being overly exposed. That kind of love is rare. It's not based on fear or scarcity. It's not desperate to prove or earn. It's rooted in peace. You're no longer auditioning for affection. You're not addicted to the chase. You're simply present, alive, whole, and that wholeness creates space for a real, grounded kind of intimacy. At the end of the day, your energy is your currency. What you tolerate teaches people how to treat you. What you focus on shapes what grows, and how you feel about yourself becomes the baseline for every interaction. So make self-worth your home, make peace your standard, make joy your responsibility. When you do, you stop needing to be craved to feel valuable. You become someone who is naturally craved, not because you're chasing attention, but because you radiate something rare, someone who is already enough.